I'm Thiago Passos from SSW TV, and we're here at NDC Sydney. I'm here with Laura Bell. She's the CEO of SafeStack, and she's a security expert. How's it going, Laura?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Good, very good. So first of all, how did you start with security?
On a personal level, or how does a team start?
I think both, really, because when you think about security, you think about hacking, right? And for someone to start with security, they should be able to hack stuff.
So what you'll find the more security people you talk to is you'll realize that most of us got here by accident. Okay. So I was actually, I started off as a COBOL developer because I'm super cool. And then I eventually became a Java developer via a very wiggly path. But like most of the security people, I was very good at just naturally kind of pushing buttons in the wrong way and making strange things happen. Now at that point, your employer will do two things. They will either fire you or they will find you a team of equally awkward, strange people, and they'll make you go and play with those people. Right. I was lucky enough not to lose my job. I went to find the strange people in the basement, and this strange journey into security began. So many of us, actually, we didn't start out thinking we were going to be hackers. We were developers and engineers and IT admins who happened to just see things a little bit strangely. Okay. So if for the people who were starting out that path themselves, it's kind of about letting yourself relax a little bit, and just like when you were young, make it okay to kind of ask those weird questions or kind of take another look at it in a different way. All
right. And from a developer's perspective, what do you think is the most common issues regarding to security? Okay,
so it's a pretty big question, right? The crux of this comes down to that we're not all working with pristine code bases. We don't all get the luxury of working on something from scratch. We normally inherit somebody else's code base. Now, that's great if you're working with a modern language or a framework, but many of us inherit code bases that were written 15 years ago or have been written by 300 developers over time. And so one of the biggest challenges is firstly rationalizing this giant code base and getting it straight in your head what connects with what, understanding all of the potential flows through it, and then also realizing that the bits that we can't upgrade, those legacy components that sit in there, how that impacts the newer stuff you're writing. Because if you start from scratch with a clean slate, your modern frameworks do a lot of this for you. So you've probably got a head start, but that's not the reality for the most part.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Because when you're working with the latest technology, you kind of assume that security is in place, so you don't need to do much. But that's kind of wrong from a developer's perspective, isn't it?
There's two arguments in this. It's kind of wrong that we make assumptions, but at the same time, if we didn't make these assumptions, then the process of developing software would take a lot longer than we did now. Imagine, for example, if you ignore security and you look at your networking stack. Now, all of us are quite familiar with, if I need to open a socket or I need to do some kind of network level thing, there's part of my framework that does it. Now, we don't go through the code and then go and validate that it's actually going to do the right handshake and that. We just go, oh, where's the document? I need these 3 lines and off I go. We should be able to assume the same level of quality from the security controls in our frameworks. Some of the challenges come from us having so many different frameworks run by different people of different experience levels. For the more mature libraries like .NET, languages like .NET, there's a lot of scrutiny over those. So, a lot of hard work has gone into it. For some of the newer languages coming through, they are awesome and solving different problems, different challenges.
But not as mature.
No, and a lot of them are open source. So, open source communities are amazing, vibrant places, but you don't have that guidance, you don't have that rigor or the experience coming through because the people who contribute aren't always, and I am generalizing, the people who would be best suited to that kind of role.
Yeah, one of the things that you mentioned in one of your talks was bringing a npm package to your source code and then running. And for a developer point of view, that for a .NET developer point of view, that doesn't mean a security issue because you run the npm packages in the client, so it doesn't really matter. But from a Node.js point of view, that matters a lot because Node runs in the server, so it can really
absolutely. And we have to get used to really thinking about each of these components, it's because we've got so many different technologies in place now, we start to generalize and say, well, it's Node stuff, it's NPM stuff, we don't need to worry. But that's not the case. We have to think every instance that we use it, not just, oh, it's this and therefore a blanket answer. Especially with the JavaScript languages and frameworks where pretty much anything goes, which is the JavaScript way and always has been. Yeah.
Cool. One of your talks also, you talk about startups and things that startups can do to improve the security. And you mentioned the top 4 things. Can you talk a bit about it?
Yeah. So security, we're quite good at what we do. We've been doing it a long time. But the one thing we're terrible at is relating to other human beings. So while we've been communicating these messages for literally decades, nobody knows they exist. And the one that I was referring to was some guidance that's been through from the Australian government in this case, which was the top 35 cyber mitigations or security mitigations you could put in a system that would prevent or reduce the likelihood of a successful attack. Now they found, with all their surveys of Australian businesses and Australian compromises, that 83% of the compromises could be reduced or removed entirely by 4 different practices. Those practices concerned updating your applications, so patching your applications, updating your operating system, so the layer below, application whitelisting, so only allowing a certain set of known good things to run on your systems, and then principle of least provision and account password controls. So the idea that we all have hundreds of passwords in our lives, and perhaps we could get better at managing them because it's a very easy routine.
Do you have any preferred password manager?
Well, firstly, let me say I have no financial involvement with any password management company. In fact, I have to use 2 day to day because some of my customers use one and our company uses another. I have experience and have had good times using 1Password for Teams and LastPass.
Okay.
And for multi-factor, so aggregation and multi-factor, Authy is very good too.
Yeah. Cool. So you also talk about continuous security. Can you elaborate that a bit more? Like you have a whole talk on that. So just to summarize a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not just going to sit here for 45 minutes. The idea being that at least in more mature organizations, we're used to the idea of doing security at the end. So we'll get a specialist team in to help us, maybe do a penetration test. And it becomes this kind of like special event part of our life cycle. In reality, the risk from security vulnerabilities in our software is continuous. And the pace that we're developing software is very, very fast. We've gone from 18-month waterfalls to 10 times a day if you're really lucky. So what we have to do is take this kind of one-off special event security and weave it through what we're doing to try and get this continuous awareness of where our risk is, and so that we're planning and updating our mitigations and controls as frequently as the risk is changing, which can be quite a change for organizations who traditionally have had, security team over here, developers over here, testers over here, ops over here, and never the twain shall meet. So.
All right. One of the statements that you said in one of your talks was build a robot army, make them work for you and take the credits. What do you exactly mean about it?
Okay. So way back when I first started in my career, I had a guy who's now still my mentor many years on. And he, on the first day of my job, he said, "Laura, I've given you the most boring job I could possibly imagine. In fact, I've taken every task I don't want to do, and I've put it in your job description." I was like, "Oh, gee, thanks. That's awesome." I thought I was going to have the worst job ever. He was like, "I'll give you a clue. If you can make all of these tasks go away, we've got this whole other list of the stuff we actually want to get on with, and they're pretty cool projects. But we need to get these done, and that's what roles are like. You always have this list of stuff you have to get done, and for me, that's many of them are security tasks, right? Monitoring things or updating things, and they're not glamorous. So what he said and what he encouraged me to do was to create my own robot army, and that was automation. Now this was automation before we had many of the great frameworks and automation tools we had then. I was writing very dirty Perl scripts, but it left this very long-lasting appreciation that automation would give me the ability to do the things I wanted all day, but the comfort that the things I have to do but don't enjoy were still going to get done. And so that's a trait that's fared me very well since then in other developer roles, as I then became a penetration tester, and now that I'm a security consultant running a security practice. Life is full of these kind of things you don't want to do.
Yeah.
Just get them
Yeah,
done
it
with a
doesn't
robot.
apply to security only, it applies to
No, absolutely.
every tech role, really.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's the usual cliches in the cartoons of, you know, how long should I spend automating it compared to how long I'm going to use it, and all true, absolutely true. But from my perspective, we're engineers. We are wired to build things. We're not wired to sit and do boring or tedious tasks. So why don't we use our superpower for you know, our own personal gain?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Any exciting things coming up from you, or any new talks, any new events?
Exciting things from us. Well, the book is coming out this month, so through O'Reilly, so that's Agile Application Security. Oh, cool. So I've worked with the head of research at Duo Labs and former director of security at Etsy, so Rich Smith, who people may have seen talk at other things about security culture. Michael Brunton-Spall, who has done talks at many conferences about things like security personas and fast-moving security. We've worked together to write this book. Now, we don't make money from it, like you never write a book to make money. But it's been a really good project for us to really crystallize how security works for developers. And not just the OWASP Top 10, which absolutely crucially important, but this is wider. This is the how do I make this work in my life, rather than just, you know, here's how one exploit works.
Cool. So before we finish, do you guys have any questions for Laura? Can you go to the mic there, please? Sure. Just at the end.
Hi Laura, I noticed this morning you mentioned that your office is in Auckland, and being the perceptive software developer that I am, I've spotted that your accent is not a Kiwi accent. So why did you choose to open an office in New Zealand?
Okay, all right, so that's an interesting question. That's a bit of a strange one, why not? Okay, so I obviously was born in the UK. In fact, I was born in a really kind of rough neighbourhood in the UK. One of the reasons that I guess have my affinity for security is because my home place had a lot of crime. Like you understand how crime works if you're around it all the time. Like I understood how you would steal things. You understood at Christmas every house had a black light, so like the UV lights. And you had one because you'd want to have a cursory, just a skim of whatever's coming through the door and just check it didn't have somebody else's postcode or phone number on it, because the UV marking pens for you know, identities. So anyway, I had a great upbringing. I'm not complaining about it at all. But I went on to have several jobs, eventually doing some government work that was very, very important, but very high pressure. And so I decided, hey, I've been doing this for 4 years. Myself and my husband, we could have gone and got a job in London or somewhere. And we went, you know what? Screw it. No, we're going to go. Yeah, and we came to New Zealand 6 years ago. We were going to stay for a few weeks. We fell in love with the country. And then we also realized that this part of this world, this hemisphere, and it's one of the most beautiful things about doing engineering down here, this is a place in the world where you can go, you know what, I'm going to try a thing, I'm going to build something. Now, if you do that in England, they turn around and they'll go, let me buy you beer. I think you're mad and this is going to fail. And they'll tell you the 20 reasons this is going to fail. You do this in Australia or New Zealand, they go, let me buy you a beer. I think you're mad. But what can I do to help you? And they just get stuck in too. And it's a wonderful place to just take a risk and try something. And that's really freeing, because my industry particularly, we haven't tried anything new in a very, very long time. So it's been quite freeing to be down here and do it.
Cool, cool.
Hope that answers your question.
Any more questions? No? Cool, that's it. Thank you very much, Laura.
You're quite welcome.
This is Thiago Passos from SSW TV. Thank you for watching.